7.3 Production, the cost curves for Beautiful Cars. Beautiful Cars is an imaginary company that produces luxury cars, and the strategy of this company is to produce a small number of cars but try to make a large profit on each car produced. So let's get inside this factory. This is the assembly line for Beautiful Cars, and this company incurs two types of costs. The first type are the fixed costs, and as its name suggests, fixed costs are independent of the number of cars that this company produces. The example of fixed costs are the research and development costs that go into designing new cars, or the advertisement cost of promoting a new car, or the cost of patenting a new technology that this firm is using to produce cars. The second type of costs are the variable costs, and again, as its name suggests, these costs vary or increase as we produce more and more cars. A good example of it is the car components. As you produce more cars, you're going to spend more on car components, therefore your variable costs go up. The combination of fixed costs and the variable costs give you the total costs. Now let's go back to our textbook and scroll down to see the concepts that we talked about depicted in a graph. Here the x-axes represent the number of cars produced per day and y-axes represent the costs. The purple line depicts the total cost of production, and as you can see, if our company does not produce any car at all, it still have to pay a fixed amount of cost, which we represent by F here. Now we introduce a new concept called the average cost of production, which is the total cost of production divided by the quantity of cars produced. For instance, if our company decides to produce 20 cars, the total cost, which is $80,000 divided by 20, will get $4,000, the average cost of producing a car. If our company decides to increase its production further from 20 to 40 cars per day, then the average cost declines from $4,000 to $3,400. But if we decide to increase our production further from 40 to 60, our average cost starts to increase from $3,400 to $3,600. So, if we depict our average cost curve, the blue curve here, we see a U-shaped. At the beginning, the average cost starts to decline. Why? Because at low levels of production, the fixed costs dominate the total cost. But after some stage, we start to reach the full capacity of our given factory, and in order to increase production, we have to put a lot of pressure on our assembly line, therefore we'll have more and more errors and breakdowns, and the average costs increases. So this was average cost, and it's a very useful concept in business. Managers of Beautiful Cars constantly think about what's the price that we're charging for our cars and how much these cars cost to produce on average for us. So let me scroll down and introduce another concept, and that is called the marginal cost. Marginal costs are the cost of producing one more car. Now you might ask, who in reality thinks about this concept? Does Beautiful Car think about the cost of producing one more car? Perhaps not. But when they are making a decision about whether to expand their business or not, Beautiful Cars think about the cost of this expansion, how much this expansion add to our costs. So in reality, businesses do use this concept at the back of their mind. Now let's go back to our assembly line. We can think of the marginal cost in this way. How much the production of the first car would add to our total cost, how much the production of the second car would add to our total cost. And we can do this all the way till the final unit, which is the 20th car. Now remember, all these cars are identical and they cost the same to produce. When we talk about the marginal cost, we are simply talking about the cost of expansion of our production. We're not talking about a cost of a particular car. Now, we know from our textbook that the marginal cost of producing the 20th car is $2,200. Producing the 20th car would add $2,200 to our costs. And if we look at our final cost, the marginal cost represents the slope of this curve. How much producing the 20th car would add to our total costs. And as you can see, the slope of our total cost increases as we expand our production, and that means our marginal cost is upward sloping. Now, the upward sloping marginal curve means that as we move along in our assembly line from the first car produced to the final car produced, the cost of producing an additional car goes up and up. And that's because of diminishing return to factors of production. More specifically here, the diminishing return to labor. To understand the diminishing return, let's think of this example. When our factory starts, it has a fixed set of machineries. To produce the first batch of cars, the first group of cars, our company needs to hire 3 workers. Now, these workers are very productive because they have a lot of machinery to work with. But to further expand its production, our company needs to hire the second group of workers. Now, these 2 groups of workers need to share the same amount of machinery, the fixed machinery, with each other. Therefore, the productivity goes down. Again, to further expand, you need to hire more workers. Now, these 3 groups of workers need to share the fixed machinery. Now, you get the idea. If you have a fixed set of machineries and you keep adding labor to your factory, the average productivity of each labor of the workers are going to go down. And therefore, the cost of expanding your production goes up and up. The marginal cost goes up and up. Finally, let me draw your attention to one thing in the graph here. Here, the marginal cost curve intersects the average cost curve at a point where average cost is the minimum. And this has to be true by definition. Why? Because remember, this is average, and this is what we are adding to average. Let me focus on an example. The average cost of 20 cars is $4,000. What happens if we add $2,200 to $4,000? It's going to drag our average further down. So, as long as the marginal cost curve is below the average cost curve, it's going to drag the average down to the point where both of these things are the same. Here, the thing that we're adding to average is exactly the same as average. So what's going to happen? Nothing. Here, the thing we're adding to average is above that. So what's going to happen? We're going to drag the average up.